Małgorzata Bonikowska, a great friend of the Warsaw Security Forum, who is the president of the Center for International Relations in Warsaw, a partner of the session. Małgosia, great to have you with us again. And please let me introduce our following guest, I think who doesn't need any introduction, General David Petraeus, Director of the Central Intelligence Agency in 2011-12, United States, as a member of the Warsaw Security Council, Warsaw Security Forum Advisory Council. We also have with us, sorry if I pronounce wrongly, but Atsuko Higashino. Yes, fantastic. I'm very happy. A professor at the University of Tsukuba in Japan. Further along, we have Ambassador Delphine Pronk, who's the chair of the Political and Security Committee at the External Action, at the European Union External Action Service. Yes, we have, of course, a dear friend of the Warsaw Security Forum, Natalia, Pouzyreff, member of the National Assembly in France, co-president of the French delegation to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. And we also have a guest, Mr. Shu-Chien Su, a senior advisor at the National Security Council from Taiwan. A round of applause to our fantastic speakers. And Małgosia, the floor is yours. I'm sure it will be a fascinating discussion.
Thanks a lot, Marcin. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks a lot for being with us and sharing this 1 hour of joint meeting. We are very happy as a Center for International Relations to take this panel, this particular panel on Europeans and non-Europeans and how we see the situation. We are a partner of Warsaw Security Forum since the very beginning, so thanks a lot for Pulaski Foundation for this opportunity. We are trying to cover non-European countries. It's not so popular in Poland, so as you can see also from the faces, many of us here at the Warsaw Security Forum are Europeans, obviously, but the objective of this panel is to give the floor also for those who come from out of Europe to see how they see the current situation in the world, especially in the security domain. So I would like to start with General Petraeus. As you, General, you are the only military in this group, and we have 3 ladies. I'm very happy to have you over in this panel. So, well, good balance. But generals first. That's a new rule in Poland, you know? Generals first. So, General, you were working in CIA, but you were also a military, and you are now in the Global Fund analyzing global risks. So the first question would be, how do you see, not only from the American perspective, but generally from the perspective of those who invest money, those who risk, what is the situation in the world? What are the highest risks and where?
Well, the world has been transformed over the nearly 13 years since I left government. And you're right, I'm a partner in KKR, which is one of the largest investment firms in the world. We have nearly $700 billion under management. And as we describe it, the world has been transformed from one of benign globalization to renewed great power rivalries. From a world in which all of the barriers to trade, investment, capital flows, even flows of people and technology were being reduced. Globalization as measured by global trade was going up like this. And we generally used to say that economics drives geopolitics. It was also a period still at that time that was arguably the later stages of the unipolar moment for the world with the US astride the global stage. 13 years later, we're in an era of renewed great power rivalries. All of those barriers to trade, investment, capital, people, technology have gone up, some very significantly if you look at the tariffs being imposed by the US and some other countries. The further rise of China has led this to being, again, a time of renewed great power rivalries, in which also, of course, during this time, Russia first occupied Crimea and the Donbass, and then, of course, 2022 carried out the full-fledged invasion. Large challenges in the Middle East, where we've seen dramatic conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, Israel and Iran, Israel and the Houthis, and of course, Israel and Hamas in Gaza, the one that is still very much unfinished, and the elevation of the importance of the Indo-Pacific, certainly to the United States and to the countries of that region, but I would argue to the entire world. You're talking about the number one and number two economies of the world, dramatically increasing in terms of demographics and all kinds of economic indicators. So again, it's a world that has truly been transformed, and it is certainly not one of benign globalization, because now geopolitics is driving economics in a very significant way.
So if I may jump into here,
Sure.
two indicators you gave us. First, that it's no more a Pax Americana, no more unipolar world. By the way, for those who don't follow international relations so carefully, just recently Pakistan signed an agreement with Saudi Arabia on defense cooperation, including some elements, probably, of nuclear sharing. Very controversial.
I'd be cautious about sharing of nuclear weapons. I'm not sure that they're going to go that
Maybe
far.
not, but it's a fact that these two countries sign an agreement, which is maybe a consequence of many years of cooperation, but it is done without our participation. When we say our, I'm mentioning obviously Western countries. So let me now switch to Japan, because Japan we consider obviously our ally, but it's in Indo-Pacific. It's one of the countries who has a border with Russia. And you don't have even a peace treaty with Russia since the Second World War. So taking into consideration what the general was saying, the general instability and no more this Pax Americana everywhere, how do you see the security developments in the world?
Yeah, thank you so much. So before coming to your question, let me just introduce what Japan has been doing in terms of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, because when we have a look at the whole program of the Warsaw Security Forum, I seem to be the only one Japanese who is speaking at this Security Forum. So just give me some seconds in order to explain.
And maybe also you can say why for you it matters.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, so well, let me start with the Japanese contribution. So we have, so far, we have spent 9 to 11 billion assistance to Ukraine, and plus 3 billion loans. So US is roughly spending 114 billion, and European countries are spending 132 billion, if I'm not wrong. So Europe is obviously spending 10 times more than we do, but so we are not dominant contributor, but at the same time we are considerable contributor for the Ukraine assistance. And the total amount of the assistance is the fifth. We are in the fifth position after US, EU, Germany, UK, and Japan, so we're in the fifth position. But when it's come to the share of aid as the percentage of GDP, we are in a 31st position, so obviously Estonia is spending a lot. Poland is obviously spending a lot, but we are in the 31st position, spending only 0.22% of our GDP. So in Japan, at this moment, there's a growing argument that we should be spending our budget domestically rather than helping Ukraine. But at the same
Especially
time,
that you have quite often changes of prime ministers.
changes prime minister and earthquakes and things like that. So it is understandable, but you know, I hope and I believe that Japan is not a country which would collapse because of the spending 0.2% of the whole GDP.
But you are also a fourth number world economy, fifth right now, right?
Fourth economy, but the in terms of the Ukraine assistance. So the lesson learned from this war, and that's one optimistic scenario and one less optimistic or pessimistic scenario, because some people say that when China, for example, have a look at this Russian aggression against Ukraine, China would consider that invasion would be expensive, invasion would be time-consuming, energy-consuming, so they would double think whether they could invade Taiwan, for example. But less optimistic scenario that I'm after is that China has already learned a lot from this war. For example, when they have a look at this Russian aggression against Ukraine, prolonging like more than 3 years, they would consider that they would like to invade somewhere in a more effective and precise way. So they would like to take the Crimean occupation sort of scenario. And also, at the time of the we have already passed 3 or 4 years of invasion. So, and some people started to say that, well, ceasefire is necessary. Ukraine has to, give us a territory, etc., etc. So, if I were Chinese, if I were, Pisa, I would really think that, well, if we can wait 3, 4, 5 years, international society would give up the idea of assisting Ukraine. So why not wait? So this could be the lesson that China could learn from this aggression. And at the same time, whenever I speak about the necessity of assisting Ukraine or assisting Europe against this background of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, I often say that, look, we have to really support Ukraine and Europe, because at the time of the East Asian contingency, if we don't assist Ukraine, if we don't assist Europe, Europe would give us up. In terms of the, at the time of the East Asian contingency. So that wouldn't be happening. So in order to strengthen the possibility of cross-support between Europe and East Asia, in terms of East Asia, I'm talking specifically about the South Korea and Japan and Taiwan. But some people are quite pessimistic about this again, because they say often that the Europe would be exhausted by the time of the East Asian contingency, so they wouldn't really want to help East Asia in any case. So this is the kind of a mixture of the discussion which is taking place.
So you help us now in order to expect some help in the future if there is any problem.
Well, we can put it in that way as well. And, but it is a healthy way of thinking that, we help them and we expect them to help them as well. So this is the whole idea of cross-support, I think.
Before I jump into our European colleagues, and it just happens we have two ladies from two countries who are quite engaged in the Pacific, the Netherlands and especially France. France has territories in Indo-Pacific, which is not necessarily remembered in Poland. But I think even Poland discovered that between Poland and Japan, we have just one country.
Yeah.
It's just the problem, it's very big. But if not this country, we could be neighbors, really. So it's quite close. But before we go to the Europeans, I would like to ask our Taiwanese friend Shu. We've just heard your foreign minister speaking, and obviously you are having your own issues. Similarly to us, but it seems that you are far away. Do you feel, coming here to Warsaw, that you are so far away? And in what way you think instability in Europe can bring instability to the Indo-Pacific? Do you see some similarities or some differences between your country's situation and us here in the eastern flank?
It's not only similarity, it's connection, direct connection. From our perception, the theater here is directly connected with our theater. We have no doubt about that. I hope you don't have any doubt about that either. Why? Very simple. As you can see, China has already been helping Russia. They help Russia building all the defense industry with Chinese machinery tools. And I believe China is testing a lot of their system, I'm talking about weapon system, in Ukrainian battlefield. Recently, there is a report. Russia is helping China developing airborne assault battalion with the aircraft and vehicles and training their soldiers. They have already been helping each other. I'm talking about warfare. Not to mention FEMI, hybrid warfare. They're also learning from each other. And let's guess in the future, before I say how they help each other, let me tell you my assumption. I don't think Europe will have the luxury to help us. You will help yourself. Because once there's a contingency happens in our region, in Indo-Pacific, you guys will be busy too. Very easy. Because they will work together. At the same time, they will...
So you believe in this scenario given to us recently that China and Russia can join forces and Russia engages Europeans in Europe and
keep us all busy and keep US busy. That's their plan. We have to be very firm about that, and we have to prepare for that. That's our assumption.
Okay, let's hear now the European voice. Maybe I will start with France. You are a politician, parliamentarian. What is the French, how to say, reaction on what is happening? Because we are discussing Europe, but you also have beautiful islands in the middle of Pacific. How do the French people think about insecurity in the Pacific?
Well, indeed, France has got close to 2 million citizens living overseas. It's the second largest economical exclusive zone in the world. So therefore, we have independent strategy for Indo-Pacific. But I wanted to stress before that the perspective you have on strategic issues depends, really varies highly where you stand from. If you stand in Japan, Taiwan, Europe, India, and we have to understand the challenges of the other countries. And, you know, I was recently in Honolulu by the 7th Fleet, the Pacific Fleet of the United States. And I was wondering where I was looking at. Was I looking to the west or to the east? And so it's true that all the theaters are interconnected now, but we have all different issues. For France, it's very clear that we have first to protect our people, that we have to fight against illegal fishing, that we have to strengthen our partnerships in the area, that we have to support cohesion of European nations being present in the area, in the region, for instance, through what we call the coordinated maritime presence, that we can support the United States of America being a base, a background base, you know, a stronghold if necessary. So for those we don't know, we have we are more on the third chain of islands with Tahiti. We have also New Caledonia, Réunion in the Indian Ocean, and we have deployed approximately 8,000 military men. It's nothing compared to the US.
But if I may ask you, because there is a little bit like a rivalry between France and the UK, who has also the territories in Indo-Pacific, especially Pacific, and you were not very happy when AUKUS, this alliance, was formed without France, right? So what's the situation now?
Definitely. Well, things are improving, but it was really a knife in the back, we considered. We told it to our British friends and to our American friends. I understand the issues for the Americans to have kind of a repair shop for their nuclear submarine in Australia, but there was, a lack of trust at the moment because of that. I think we can still cooperate. I think things are improving. We share, you know, very often common drills, exercise with all the nations over there. We try to balance our relationship in the area. Of course, it's very important to hear the voice of the countries, the states who are in this region. I understand that for the United States, it's a completely total change of perspective, and that they value very much the global order that was achieved after World War II. This is very important because we are Western democracies, so we value it as well. So I think we know where we stand. We are definitely in the camp of democracies.
I have to ask you one more question, because everybody knows that France is absolutely crucial for the EU in case of military, because you are the only nuclear power once Brexit was done. But in the same time, internally, you are a politician in the parliament, in assembly. It's not a very stable situation in France, politically speaking. So does this affect your operations outside the country?
No, for the time being, because we have through our constitution, the president of the country that is ruling all these foreign affairs and defense policies. So there's continuity, and that's why the president is elected, by all the French citizens, because he only has the power to push the button of the nuclear deterrence
it
if
will
necessary.
not be necessary.
But I mean, this is nobody sees the root of our constitution. This is very important. He has the power from the people. And this gives some continuity. Then, of course, we shall wait next week to have a new government. So we shall see. I just wanted to add something. We should not forget about the environmental issue and the challenge that comes from the climate change. We really have to support all the countries that are threatened by, the sea level rise. That's why we do not agree with the current American administration regarding the fact that they say that environmental issues are bullshit or something like that. Sorry for my rude word.
Well, this was said also
it really will affect millions of people in the Indo-Pacific region.
Especially these beautiful islands. But before we handle that, I would like to ask Ambassador Pronk, because you are in the midst of all these EU countries as External Action Service. And there are countries like yours who have some experience far away, but there are other countries who, for example, Poland, who are never there. How do you handle these interests in the security domain, and in what way Europe can really be more engaged as a whole in the global security matters?
Well, thank you, Małgorzata, for that question. So just to set the record straight, indeed, I'm a Dutch diplomat, but I'm on loan to the EU, so that's why I'm proudly wearing the EU flag on my lapel here. So I chair on behalf of the High Representative Kaja Kallas, the Ambassadors Committee that is called the PSC, Political and Security Committee. But I want to answer your question by a simple answer, saying that we, since 2021, as EU, developed an Indo-Pacific strategy. And that's a strategy that's been embraced by all 27 sovereign nations when they decide in unanimity on our common security and defense policy and common foreign and security policy. Like the general said...
Do you have really a common foreign...
Well, yeah, and I'll come to that, and I'll give you some concrete examples of that and how that manifests. And I want to thank the General for also laying out how geopolitical and geoeconomical circumstances force us to do more, faster, and better together. And I want to thank our Japanese friend, because Japan is instrumental, not only as an important partner, but also in the G7. Your leadership is really appreciated. I wanted to thank you for that. So I speak under the authority of one of my 27 member states when I say that the EU and the Indo-Pacific share indeed the common security horizon. Now, what we did, and I want to take you to the Northwest Indian Ocean to show you how interconnected these things are. When the Houthi attacks, the Houthis were having a field day attacking our commercial shipping. The EU, in record speed of time, so February 2024, decided to create our Operation Aspides in Asian Greek. That means shields, to be a defensive operation to protect our commercial shipping, because if we have troubles getting our stuff cheaper and faster to the European consumer, you bet your boots that those theaters are interconnected, not only in the Red Sea, but also when we go back further to the Indo-Pacific. So this operation is quite successful. And together with our Operation Atalanta that used to fight piracy, they still do, off the coast of Somalia. Let's not forget that the Indo-Pacific also has the eastern part of Africa as important partners to make sure that we have that security of navigation. Both the operations conducted joint exercises with India to make sure that we know what threats we are ready to face. We spoke earlier today in a different panel on security and defense partnerships. The EU currently has signed 8 of the likes, and one is with Japan, the other is with South Korea. So on this Indo-Pacific strategy, all EU27 rally around, and there were 7 priorities. I think the priority that was at that time a bit lower, it was 2021, now has become on top of all of our priorities, and that's security and defense. It's not a matter of if, but how we work together, because also for Poland, it is important that that security also ties into Russian aggression against Ukraine. So those theaters are very much interconnected.
But at the same time, I have to put another question to you, maybe others can comment as well. India, which is missing in the panel, that's why I just want to replace our Indian friends. India has a very tricky foreign policy. From one side, they hopefully want to cooperate with us, and the EU is also finalizing, hopefully, the FTA with India, which maybe Donald Trump can help a little bit because of the tariffs given on India, 50%. But on the other side, Indian military takes part in Zapat military exercises. How do you understand that, and how Europe can answer to this?
Yeah, well, the first thing we need to do, and that's actually what I did 2 weeks ago when I took the whole committee to India, is ask India that question. How do you marry being part of an exercise that 4 years ago was the prelude to the full-scale Russian invasion into Ukraine to wanting to have a security and defense partnership that is built on trust. So trust, as we know, is something that is very hard to gain and very quickly lost. So I'm a diplomat, so I cannot also, while we're being broadcasted on YouTube, take you to all those behind-the-scenes conversations, but for sure that's a conversation that we had. I want to make sure also that this is not something that we started yesterday or this year. Of all of our defense and security dialogues, including counterterrorism, which is a longer standing one that we had with India, on cybersecurity, on hybrid threats that were mentioned. We're learning also from these important partners. So we also have something to gain when we partner with those very big, and let's also, you mentioned democracies. This by now is the most largely populated country in the world. So we need to work together with democracies.
Yes, India is democracy. India has a very interesting position. India wants to be neutral, but it is very difficult to be neutral in these circumstances. General, how do you
Can I comment on that quickly? Because I was in the Raisina dialogue. A lot of you go to this, a big gathering in India every year, early in the year, and it was former Foreign Secretary at that time, Jai Shankar, and I were on stage together. And I made a fairly passionate plea that it was time for India to choose sides. They could not continue to balance, again, Russia on the one side or China and the United States. And he said, General, we have chosen a side, and it is India's side. So the India first policy is, in effect, deal with it, understand it. This is the reality. Certainly, they have edged closer and closer and closer to the U.S. in terms of economic interests. I would argue even to a degree in foreign policy, a member of the Quad. They're buying more Western military kit, French aircraft, as I recall, more U.S. military kit, but they still have a legacy, and that legacy has them solidly in the BRICS, even however uncomfortable those members may be with one another. And they have a long history of using Soviet equipment, Russian equipment now, that it's very difficult to transition from, because a lot of this is legacy material that they still do use. I think that probably some of the lessons from their recent encounter with Pakistan will push them even farther to the high-end Western equipment. But that is the reality of India, and I think, again, you have to just come to grips with that, understand it, in a way accommodate it, even as they accommodate some of the actions that we take. And I hope that our two countries, the US and India, can resolve the current situation in which we find ourselves.
But don't you think, in any case, that taking part in military exercises, which are openly against the Western alliance, is taking a side?
Well, Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Beijing seems that same way. But again, get over it. Recognize, as a CIA director, you learn very early on that you have to deal with the world the way that it is, not the way you'd like it to be. And this is the way the world is.
So we have to put the question how to handle India, not only how to handle China. Shu, what is your understanding of this? You're in between. I mean, India is next doors, but China is closer. What would be your interpretation and how to handle India?
My interpretation of India?
What they are doing, because they are the major player in the region.
Well, I'm also a frequent visitor to Rasina Dialogue. Rasina Dialogue is very, very different from a forum like this. They have participants from the country that we're not familiar with.
The Global South is well represented
Exactly.
at Rasina Dialogue. And they seek to do that. They want us. We did the Trilateral Commission there, and it was full of Global South, not the traditional, again, North Atlantic countries and Japan.
But we in this room, we have to be aware that Global South exists, and they have the
Of
other
course.
perception of what's going on.
Of course. And I remember one year we also have Russian guests at the same time in the table. So India is located in a very interesting geopolitical position. We have to understand that. Next door is Iran or Iraq, and of course, China is also India's neighbor. So that geopolitical situation is very, very interesting. I think that's why they come up with such a, let's say, resilient position on the global politics. But just one thing, if I have an Indian friend, I would advise them. I mean, the Russian weapon system doesn't seem to be that effective, actually, in the battlefield. So I would recommend to think otherwise, take a gradual step to shift away from the Russian military system. I think will serve their own national interest.
And I think
And
they're trying
they've
to
actually been
do it.
doing that. And again, we need to foster that, continue to ensure that the momentum is in the right direction.
I am just stressing that we are very happy that we are doing this conversation also in partnership with a think tank from India, Observer Research Foundation, the organizers of Rasina Dialogue,
Yep.
which is a good connection to Global South. Professor, you're now coming back to you, Japan. Obviously, and I want to ask you as an analyst, in what way you can take lessons from Ukrainian war to your region? You help, you mentioned how much Japan helps, but now what lessons can you take as far as if something happens in your region?
Yeah, resilience is very, very important in any way, in any way, in order to enhance the total sort of defense ability in Japan. So because when we have a look at the Russian aggression against Ukraine, Russian invaded Ukraine for various reasons, but at the same time, they invaded Ukraine thinking that Ukraine has no intention, no willingness to fight back against Russia. And at the same time, Russia overestimated the intention of the Western community or the other partners to assist Ukraine. So Russia had a lot of miscalculation for that. So learning lesson from there, the one that we invaded, one that was threatened by any country who would like to change the status quo by using military force, we have to build up our resilience in the first place. And before being threatened by any such countries, we have to build the coalition of willingness, so which is rightly happening in terms of Ukraine. So that is a very important two lessons that we have already learned from the case of Russia and Ukraine.
Before I give the floor to the audience, I'm expecting some questions, so please just prepare yourself. Question to the general. From the military point of view, what lessons should we take, or should the countries in the Indo-Pacific take from war in Ukraine?
Well, everybody should be taking numerous lessons from the war in Ukraine, and I don't think that any of us are learning them as rapidly as we should, except for the Ukrainians. Very few of our countries have the boots on the ground that are actually out with Ukrainian forces. I just finished my 7th trip there 2 weeks ago. Every single time I go there, I visit certain unmanned systems units. By the way, this is one of the few countries, Ukraine, that has not just an Army, Navy, Air Force, but an unmanned systems force. It's an entirely separate service. The advances they have been making in all areas, all domains of unmanned services, are incredible. This is a country that has no Navy as we know it, manned ships at sea, and yet it has sunk 1/3 of the Russian Black Sea Fleet and forced the Russian Black Sea Fleet to bottle itself up completely in a Russian port as far from Ukraine as you can get. How did they do it? Aerial drones that find the Russian ships, maritime drones that sink them. I drove the Magura the last time I was in Ukraine. It got it up to 100 kilometers an hour. And it's just an extraordinary system. They're building larger ones now. When you look at what they're doing in the air, by the way, the systems that we sent early on, we used to be the trainers and they were the trainees. They actually need to be the trainers now, and we need to be the trainees when it comes to this counter-drone wall that we need and so forth. There are very few systems now that are still that effective on the battlefield. Certainly the Patriot, F-16, some others. But by and large, the Ukrainians are making very, very effective systems of all types, even self-propelled artillery pieces now, not to mention 3.5 to 4 million drones this year alone. And again, no country has learned what we should have from this. It starts with real concepts that turn into doctrine and then drive organizational change, training, leader development, and above all, materiel. We should be going to school on what Ukraine is doing much more effectively than we are. The fact is that the responses by NATO countries on the front lines to drone incursions have not been that effective. It's been good to see the response, but shooting down a drone with a Sidewinder missile is not a good cost-effective action. So again, we need to be learning much, much more from what they're doing than we are. The systems we were very proud of in the beginning, the precision artillery, the guided missile launch rocket system, a number of our suicide drones, these don't actually work that well anymore because of the Russia is innovating as well. By the way, the country that is going to school is China. China is very focused on this. Not only are they providing the lion's share of the components that are enabling the Russian war machine to crank out quite high levels of production, they're also learning from this quite assiduously as well. So I think we really have to focus much more on this. I was very impressed by Poland, which when it had the incursion, it immediately reached out to Ukraine and said, okay, we've been helping you, and now we need your help when it comes to this particular element of what really is the future of war, and that is in Ukraine. And it's evolving very, very rapidly.
So it's like reverse mentoring. Now it's the time maybe they also give us some knowledge. And also we have to be quick. Commissioner Kubilius already mentioned this several times today, that we have to learn from the Ukrainians. But he also mentioned that these European mills are so slow that this may be a challenge per se. How do you see that, Director? Ambassador.
Yeah, maybe indeed we're not fast enough and we're not doing enough together and we're not ramping up enough. But I want to make sure also that the message is heard indeed that Russian aggression against Ukraine is not an exclusive European problem or issue. I hear that a lot when we travel and when we reach out to this horrible term global south. I think those theaters are so extremely connected. And as my boss Kaja Kallas always says, if you don't get Russia right, you won't get China right. So we need to make sure that we rally around stopping Putin from actually doing this. Now, as long as we're not there, indeed, we need to catch up, be faster and better. And that's also why you've seen the European Commission encouraging member states, because in the end, this is a national capacity, defense and defense spending. And I would like to recall that 23 of EU member states are also NATO allies, so they committed to the spending target. But for me, it's not about numbers or spending targets. It's about actually doing things. So yes, we might have been slow to catch up. I think with the help of Ukraine, and the Danish model is a great example of Ukrainian industry being actually active and able to produce on European territory. I would like to also make the remark that we've trained now as EU up to 80,000 Ukrainian soldiers. Poland was amazing and is amazing in facilitating that. So that is something that we are doing and we will keep on doing, but we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time, to be active in different theaters, to step up, not just for our security, but as for global security.
I was in the EU headquarters 2 weeks ago, including in the office that you're part of, and also the EU Commission President's office, and also at NATO headquarters. And my message to each of them was that they do not have enough individuals actually in Ukraine, on the ground, sitting with the Nemesis Regiment or these other great unmanned systems organizations, learning. They have the best battle management system in the entire world right now. They built it with $4 million of donated money, and it's probably better than the billions of dollars JAD-C3, whatever it is, that we have in the United States. The talent there is extraordinary, and they have a partnership between those who design weapon systems and other systems, manufacture them, and employ them that is like this, instead of the litigious relationship that we have between the Pentagon and those who make the weapon systems and those who use them.
Great. So we know that we have to learn a lot. Questions, please. Do we have some mics? Yes. Maybe here, the lady in front, and then the gentleman and the lady back. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Latika Burke. I'm a journalist with the Nightly Australia and also associate expert with the ANU Security College. I think, Delphine, I wanted to ask you about the step back from the United States. It felt under the Biden administration that the integration of understanding the two theatres was happening. You were able to make a lot of progress in terms of both Russia and China and helping countries understand that joint threat. How do you feel that's materialising and how it goes forward? Have you struggled in Europe to reach out to the global south, we hate that term, and reinforce this point? Has it suffered? And to the point that the Taiwanese gentleman made about if there's a two-front war, what does the infrastructure look like for how we in the West actually battle that together? Because that's going to open up an entirely separate sort of, I think, joint response that we would need.
Who will answer that?
Can I also answer after you?
I mean, I can start with, look, I think the pivot to Asia, which really should have been the rebalance to Asia, which is a more accurate description, continues. The Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, Bridge Colby, is a huge proponent of that. He's the one crafting the National Defense Strategy. It appears that there's going to be greater emphasis on homeland defense and security in our own hemisphere. But again, the most important effort that we have to deter is in the Indo-Pacific. And keep in mind that deterrence is a function of a potential adversary's assessment of your capabilities on the one hand and your willingness to employ them on the other. I've stated already that I think we should be transforming our forces much more rapidly than we are, based on lessons that we should be learning in Ukraine, but probably aren't internalizing as rapidly as we should. And then we need to be very careful that there is no question about our willingness to employ our forces, even though we do not want to be needlessly provocative in that regard. Clearly, there are some assets that are, say, in the European theater that would be very useful in an Indo-Pacific theater. We've always worked hard to try to get that balance right. An awful lot of what we have in Europe is not as relevant there, probably the ground force systems and the rest of that, but certainly some ballistic missile defense, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, strategic airlift, and a variety of other capabilities that we have here. And I think there may be some continued rebalancing, as we had rebalancing. When I was the commander of U.S. Central Command, we had 250,000 soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and even Coast Guardsmen in the greater Middle East. That has dramatically reduced as the focus has shifted rightly to the Indo-Pacific. And I think that kind of reassessment of deployments will continue, but I have no doubt that we're still going to have sizable forces here and obviously really sizable forces in the Indo-Pacific.
Ambassador?
Yeah, sure. No, and I think this is a trend that we've seen coming also, regardless of whichever administration there is. So the message has been the same. Maybe the tone of voice has been a bit different. Mercurial at times, whatever qualification you would like to give. But you ask me about, so how do the US and EU then cooperate? And it starts indeed with a shared threat assessment. And still, that is something that we really very much exchange on, see eye to eye on. And I want to also recall we have had numerous exchanges, not only as US and EU, but also as EU and NATO. And America, the United States of America, is still a part of that, a quintessential one. So yes, we're seeing eye to eye on the analysis, maybe not always on the answers and how to deal with maritime security connected to economic security. Yeah, that's a conversation that we had in previous administrations. I think we're working very hard to continue that because it starts with a joint understanding and then each does their part. And I think there also the EU has maybe surprised many that we are stepping up and doing more also for our own security in and around the ring of instability that we are in, and that would also ultimately benefit the other rings of instability that we're working with.
And NATO and the EU have stepped up very, very significantly. By the way, it's not just the commitment to 3.5%. The combination of Vladimir Putin on the one hand and President Donald Trump on the other has worked miracles when it comes to European willingness to spend on defense, and it's long overdue. But the 3.5% is fantastic, but also the pace of diplomacy. I mean, European diplomacy has never been noted for its speed. Think about what happened when President Trump met with Vladimir Putin in Anchorage. I think it was on Friday. And then on Monday, the leaders of the major European countries and the EU Commission and President Zelensky are in the White House. That is moving fast. The Article 4 discussions, the first one was held. That night there was a communique about what was actually going to happen with concrete military actions on top of that. So that is also, I think, very notable and has not been actually recognized, I don't think, as much as it should be.
And I think it's also, we have to stress the power of the leaders, because without leaders, the EU could not operate, and that was including UK, by the way.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly. It's including UK, and it's about European nations as well, and maybe more than ever, and it's about leadership. I think that when we are talking about the European pillar of NATO. It's getting more and more real as we are stepping up and increasing our budget. And definitely NATO is still the cornerstone of our collective defense. That's why we need unity and we need to stick together and engage our American partners.
Sure, you wanted to...
Yes, of course I cannot speak for US or EU on how to connect the two theaters, but at least something we can do. Taiwan is not asking European friends to defend ourselves. No, we will defend ourselves, but help us build up our capabilities. Do what you can do right now. Invest in our peace. We have to do right now. Let's not wait for another war from happening. We should deter it from happening. How to deter that? Contribute to our capabilities. We will pay. Okay? Sell it to us, first of all. Second, we should become each other's supply chain. Right? Taiwan has the best microelectronics in the world, the best, no doubt about that. And we want to become your supply, especially in unmanned system. We are also investing a lot in our own unmanned system. General, we are learning the lessons too, especially on the sea. But our unmanned system is composed of non-red supply chain. No Chinese components. Do you want that? Let's work together, right? Plus, on top of that, we should joint venture, we should co-production, do co-production together, right? Each of us, we also have to enlarge our defense budget. Minister Lin just mentioned next year will be 3.32. By the year of 2027, we shall have 3.9 in our core defense budget. And you guys too. So because our budget, we have to buy a lot, right? We all need to have our own defense industry, but we all have the scale issue. So we have to scale up. We have to sell to each other, right? So, so let's work together. This is what we can do right now to deter next war from happening.
Can you help Ukraine more than you already are in terms of?
You know, we are already doing. I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
We are already doing that.
Just curious.
We are already doing that.
Well, there are so many more questions. Be please short and introduce yourself. Let's start from the gentleman here because you were first, then the lady, then yes.
Higashino sensei, Shitsumongaru. Sorry.
Wow.
My name is Sean. I'm a visiting fellow at the Danube Institute based in Budapest, Hungary. As someone who has worked professionally on the U.S.-Japanese relationship, may again soon, I have a question first to you, then I would open it up to everyone else if they have an opinion. What realistically do you think has to happen for Japan to meet President Trump's ask for Japan to spend 3.5% of GDP on defense? And then my question for all of you, if there was time, is there a game plan once the Russian bear is tackled to help our esteemed colleague here defend his country from preventing an invasion from China?
Okay, let's take one more and give a chance. Who was first? The gentleman here, and then the lady over there. These two, please. Let's take more, and then we'll answer.
Hello, my name is Mateusz Szumowski. So we already said we are all friends here, so I would like to ask straight to the point about the keyword effectiveness, because today, last year, we are all talking about the spendings, how much each of the country has spent for the defense. So could you please tell us something more, what is behind those numbers? Because I have a feeling that we are buying, for example, the things that are going to be produced in the next 10 or 20 years and will be supplied from the countries to the Europe, which will be crossed by the ocean.
Okay, great question. And the lady behind.
Thank you very much. Virginia Allen with the Daily Signal. We're based out of Washington, D.C. This question is Taiwan-specific, though General Petraeus may also want to speak to it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but from what, sir, I've heard you say is essentially that China is motivated for the war between Russia and Ukraine to continue. And yet earlier today we heard on the main stage, it stated that China might be the only one with the power and the authority to pressure Russia to end the war. So where does that leave us? And also if you could just speak a little bit further to China's motivation to keep this war going.
Okay, who will start? General?
Sure. Look, on that last question, which is a great one, I would submit, and China has actually openly said that they do not want Russia to lose this war. That's what they have publicly declared. The truth is that I think the best way to bring this war to an end is not necessarily through Beijing. I think it's from each of our own capitals. I think right now there should be a catalytic effect because of the incursions in Poland, drones buzzing around Denmark, fighter jets in Estonian airspace, and many other activities in the Russian hybrid war dictionary, if you will, that we should be taking two simultaneous set of actions much more aggressive than we are. And I think, to be fair, I think we are headed in this direction. This was one of my conversations at the EU headquarters. The first is to take more action to support Ukraine, to enable them to stop the Russians on the front lines completely, not even the incremental gains that they're achieving at tremendous loss. and to also help them improve their effectiveness against missile and drone attacks at night. This is very doable. And the single biggest action that would enable this is what the EU Commission President very cleverly is pursuing, which is to turn the $250 billion of Russian reserves in European banks into Euro-clear bonds, essentially money to give to Ukraine of that amount, and Ukraine doesn't have to pay that back until Russia provides reparations to them, which is an incredibly clever scheme and will enable Ukraine more than almost anything else that we can do, with the exception of the provision of certain of the ballistic missile defense systems and interceptors that they just can't make themselves. But getting that amount of money would enable them to double their production of drones from, say, 3.5 to 4 million a year, literally to as much as 7 to 8 million each year. And that will do an enormous amount on the front lines. We have to pick up more of what it is that we're doing. And then the other simultaneous action is to crush the Russian war economy and to penalize those, punish those who are enabling it. In this case, again, you're working on your 19th round of sanctions from the EU. I think it looks as if, again, the Commission President is going to be able to get all the countries to sign up to this. That will also then bring the United States on, because this includes stopping the purchase of oil and gas that President Trump has requested, and that could activate the ability in the U.S. Congress with the White House to pursue what are very draconian sanctions as a package, and it has very strong bipartisan support in the U.S. Congress. The Senate alone has 84 out of 100 senators supporting this. That would be huge. But then also, to go after those who are providing the components that are fueling, if you will, the Russian war machine and enabling. You remember in the beginning, they were actually buying refrigerators to strip them of their microchips. They're not having to do that anymore. So we need to have some secondary sanctions there. And then those that continue to buy the oil and gas from Russia, first get it all the way down to the EU price level, and then gradually reduce it in coordination with those that can ramp up production so that you don't affect the oil markets in a negative way. These two actions, if pursued together, I think would be the only ones that would convince Vladimir Putin that this war actually cannot continue, because he can't make any progress on the ground, and he can't make progress through the air. And by the way, then you bring in the 3,000-kilometer new cruise missile that I talked about earlier in large numbers, and Russia is going to feel enormous pressure from that. Already, some 25% of their refinery capacity has been damaged or destroyed.
Thank you. We have to give a chance to the rest of the panel to get answers, so maybe quickly we can wrap up. Japan? Question about Japan.
Okay, it is really difficult to speak about it in 10 seconds, but thank you very much for your question. And well, achieving 3.5% is very, very difficult at this moment. But at the same time, because of the Putin's aggression against Ukraine, the understanding that we are really smart, we really need to spend more in terms of the defense budget, it's increasing actually. But at the same time, there are quite a few resistance within Japanese society. Let me just quickly give you one anecdote. Prime Minister Ishiba suddenly cancelled to attend the NATO summit in July, and it made a lot of speculation about it. Some people really wanted to say that Ishiba didn't really want to see President Trump, because at that time, NATO summit was talking about 3.5% plus 1.5%, in total 5% of the defense spending in 10 years. So Ishiba really wanted to avoid that sort of argument, for Japan to be involved in that sort of. But in reality, it seems that Ishiba cancelled it because the trumpets didn't come into the IP4 meeting of the NATO summit. So it is something different from the reality, but still, that sort of rumor can easily go around because some people still fear a lot about any sort of increase of the defense budget. But at the same time, taking account of the sudden change of the security environment in Japan, nobody could finally resist.
I have to stop you here because also just 10 seconds.
10 seconds, the two questions. One on the game plan, and in short, there's one answer, and that's deterrence. So to support Ukraine and stop Russia from its endless war on Ukraine, I think that's the best deterrence also for our Taiwanese friends. And the second question on effectiveness, so we have identified critical capability gaps. Watch this space as also the leaders come together in Copenhagen and further on in this month. It's not just words, it's also doing national defense spending to make sure that this effectiveness question doesn't need to be raised. We do it by showing.
Yes, about the effectiveness in spending. You know, in France we will be doubling our defense budget within 10 years, but it's not the only issue. I think we need to have fast tracks. There are some developments which will take time to implement, but we need to have fast track, like countering drones and things like that. So we have to be very innovative at the EU level. At the EU level, there are some instruments like EDIRPA, where you can have common purchase. This is very effective. Actually, if several countries are buying the same kind of stuff, but you should not underestimate the human resources issue. And it's not only striking European industry, it's striking the American industry as well. So we have to take care of, you know, preparing the generation of technicians, engineers, and workers, and we need them very quickly. About China's motivation, China is not, well, you know, is very dependent on the global trade. So we cannot say for sure they're going to invade Taiwan. Taiwan is well protected as well. Maybe there could be a blockade, or maybe they will use all their hybrid strategies just to change the power in place in Taiwan, which is a softer way to make it, but there will be elections in 2028, I think, in Taiwan. So this is another option. And I think we, as Europeans, we have really to look for stability in the region. It is the best for everyone.
Thank you so much. And last word go to Shuya.
Yeah, very short about China's motivation. Three motivations. First of all, if Russia is defeated, China will be left alone to be dealt with by the whole Western camp. Second, when China and Russia working together, they intimidate the whole world, right? Third, China, if Russia is defeated, then China will have to handle Taiwan, and the whole world will pay attention. Right now, you guys are busy paying attention to Russia, right? Not paying attention to Taiwan. That's the reason why I'm here.
And that's the reason we have this panel also. Thank you very much. Sorry we don't have time for our questions, but the panelists are here with us for individual talks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Małgorzata. Thank you to all the great speakers. It's been a fascinating discussion, and what a way to close it. Thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, very shortly at 6 p.m. in this room, we'll have the final conversation of the program before the night halls. Is Russia winning or collapsing? The state of the country and society. A conversation with Mihail Khodorkovsky. Please join us then. Thank you.